Well, hi there everyone, this is Scott Nicholson. Here I am on day 3 of GDC, and this is where the show shifts. It goes from being more of an academic show into more of a trade show. I'm here in front of the expo hall, as you can see. So behind me we've got everyone lined up from PlayStation, from all the different companies, and I'll be joining the throngs to go in and see some of the new stuff. Now, I don't think I'm going to find a lot of board games in there, but it'll still be kind of exciting since I'm here to be here with the big hoo-ha. What's interesting is just a couple blocks away, there's a big Apple sign that appeared on a window, and the Apple sign is about the new launch of the iPad. So anyway, I'll show you bits and bobs throughout, but I just wanted to say, as everyone's gathering for the expo hall, it's getting ready to be time to get excited and go Expo! So one of the things they have here at GDC is called GDC Play, and the idea of this is a place to actually come over and play games. And so a lot of these are smaller groups that have just a few games or independent games that are here, and so it's a chance to come over and actually try these different things. And now this is something that's kind of interesting. So what they're doing is they're making different types of noises to actually control their different characters up on the screen. And so it's the game where you learn to be a Foley editor, or at least flee from the buffalo. So that's interesting. And I have to say it's nice to see something interesting, because a lot of what I'm seeing here is, well, you know, more of what we've seen again and again and again and again. But anyway, I thought I'd let you see this little part of GDC known as GDC Play. One of the other pieces that they have here that's interesting is a history area. And so they've actually put together over here the history of 3D games. So it's actually, they've got all the old Vectrex. I remember this. You know, this nice system here, and the Atari 5200. I did have the 2600, however. And so you've got, going through the years, you know, we've got old Xboxes, we've got old computer games, Microsoft Flight Simulator. There you go. I can actually show the Pong system here, the old first Pong system, the Atari VCS. That was the system I grew up with the most. Got the Odyssey. It's kind of fun to see some of the old games out here and helping people who maybe didn't grow up with these things to realize that there was a life of interesting decisions to be made before joysticks had to have 2,000 buttons on them. So anyway, that's a little bit of GDC Play here at GDC, the Game Developers Conference. So you can see Nintendo behind me. I had a chance to play with some of the 3DSs. The top screen is 3D. I played Mario Tennis. It was very interesting. The 3D worked really well for a tennis game. And so on the show floor here, what you have are lots and lots of different video game companies showing their new games. You've got a lot of design companies, you've got a lot of small companies showing independent games and things like that. But what else did I do today? Well, the thing I did first was I went to Sid Meier's talk. Sid Meier did Civilization, and he talked about important decisions, interesting decisions. And he talked about the idea of when you designing a game is really about creating situations for interesting decisions for players. And the idea of that is that you need to think about the player's perspective. You need to think about what's the play style they want to engage in the game with. You need to give them long and short-term decisions to make. You need to have them balancing risk and reward, and you need to make them feel important. He talked about that the quality of a game is really about a combination of how good you are at telling a story, about putting the player in this fantasy space, combined with giving them interesting decisions about the fantasy space. Now, after that, actually, I had a very interesting lunch with one of my colleagues, someone I've met with before, who's a game scholar. I don't know if you remember, but some time ago, I showed one of his talks where he showed how to take a game and make a diagram out of that game. And so he did that for Monopoly, but he also does it that same way of describing game mechanisms, did that in other sorts of games. And so I talked with him about how we might work together in order to use these things to power a library-like service for discovering new games. So we'll see where that goes. I'm pretty excited about where that could happen. I went to the IGDA, which is the International Game Developers Association, funding a new group on games and education, and about people making learning games and games to make a difference. And so chatted with some of the people about what I'm doing there, and I'm sure you'll hear a lot more about that. Just finished going to a talk by Eric Zimmerman, where he talked about games as an aesthetic form. He talked about how we went from an industrial age into an information age, and now moving into a ludic age, the age of play. And the idea behind this is, what he doesn't like is instrumentalization of games, which is using games for a purpose, but rather just exploring them with play. Well, oops, I guess I'm becoming an instrumentalizationalist. So what goes on here in the show floor, it's chaotic. As you can see, it's noisy. You got people handing stuff out. Oh, and I had an interesting thing happen. So I was walking along and someone said, "Hey, are you?" and stopped. And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Oh, Board Games with Scott." And this guy got very excited. And so then he said, "Hey, why don't you come over and talk with us?" So I'm going to be doing an interview for a show called Game Talk, where I'm going to get a chance to talk about gamification. And it's all because of my Board Games with Scott stuff. So, pretty cool. So anyway, I'm going to explore the floor a little bit more before my interview. And then tomorrow will be, oh, the music's swelling behind me. And it's so exciting here at the Game Developers Conference. Navigation. Navigating the seas of information. And I shall do that and I'll show you a few other scenes from the conference. So for all of you out there that say I don't do enough wargaming coverage, here it is, wargaming.net, right behind me. Big booth, wargaming.net. Look at all the wargaming that's going on. Seems to be a lack of gaming. Just war and black leather and stuff. This is one of the things they have been going on here at GDC, and the idea behind it, this is the super magnetic game-o-matic. And so you've got people that are able to put together titles. You see we have the title, The Legend of Dr. Beer Machine, other titles with genres and things like this. And you may think, well, this is kind of silly, you know, you go and you pick through things and you put words together. But to make it much more interesting and meaningful, they've actually set up artists over here, real famous artists who are actually doing drawing of the stuff that's over there on the board. So we have the Legend of Dr. Beer Machine going on here, and he's busy drawing away and actually creating that. And so it's pretty interesting to see what artists do when they're given a title. We have the monkey fighting snakes on a Monday to Friday plane, and the picture that is coming together of exactly that. And so this is really cool. This is what happens when you let gamers go loose and say, wouldn't it be awesome if... Now this is something that's actually pretty neat. I hadn't had a chance to try it yet. So this is the PlayStation 3D TV. And what's going on here, the reason why the screen looks all bizarre like that, it's actually showing it's a racing game. And so you can kind of see the shadow there of a guy on a quad and a truck racing together. And the way it works is you actually put on these glasses, and whether you're player 1 or player 2, you get a different view of the same screen. It's actually quite clever. You can test it out. You can put on the glasses and press a button on the top to switch between the two views. So the idea is that it's a two-player game. You can actually each be watching the full screen and playing and see a different thing from each other. It's a very clever idea. I think that's neat. I think actually what's intriguing about this now, from a board game perspective, think about this. So this is one of the problems here with the board games. On a screen, you've got some hidden information. This is really a clever way that you could play a multiplayer board game where each player is seeing a different view of the screen at the same time. That's pretty neat. So these people are playing Mindplay, a game using this Mindplay tool. And the idea here is that you put this thing on your head, and they are concentrating intensely, and they're using their brain waves in an attempt to control the game. It's actually a little on the creepy side, but the idea is that you put this thing on your head, and you can put it in with an app, and then you can use the app to program it. And you can get this thing for 99 bucks. So it's a very interesting concept in order to let you play a Braintronic with the Braintronic device in order to read your brain waves. Of course, the problem is, you know, you might read the brain waves saying, this game is awful, this game is awful. The Loop is a new social network. Okay, I know what you're thinking. But hear me out, this is intriguing. So the idea of the Loop is what it allows you to do is to set up groups, and to those groups, you can broadcast live video. That's pretty neat. To me, this is interesting because it means, like, for example, if I had a group set up right now on the Loop, you right there. You could be seeing what I'm doing right now as I do it. And then you could be sending me a message saying, hey, Scott, you should ask this question or you should do something. That's interesting to me. Now, I also think about it as an educator in my online class. If I had something like this running, I could quickly create little videos on the fly to talk with students about what's going on and get some ideas. And then I think, hey, this is my nose. No. Then I think, what about the gaming perspective? You could use something like this to actually play games at a distance. First thing I think about is role-playing games, but I also wonder about board games. You know, that I know people have been talking about using Google Hangouts for that kind of thing, but I think about, yeah, this might be another tool. They're a new tool, they're pretty eager. I talked with them about how they might integrate with us in online education, so we'll see what happens. But I'm going to play around with the loop. In fact, I'm going to Disney in a few weeks, and what I might do, if I can get it up and going, is actually set this up for my Disney trip, so I can live stream what's going on with me at Mickey Mouse Place. So one of the things that I've been seeing here, which is quite interesting, are the number of folks that are providing services for payment in games, for micropayments, for microtransactions. We've got, you know, Ad for Games, EasyMoney.com. There's one that's called Virtual Piggy, which is a monetization for kids. So I'm understanding now, there's been a lot of argument against what's going on with all the monetization of social games. But I'm understanding why now as I look around at some of these things, some of these booths that just feel sleazy, you know, kind of disturbing. I mean, this librarian here, you know, I see something out there, you know, that's the Virtual Piggy there, something payment for kids. How much do I pay for kids? Are kids cheap? You know, but I don't know. This is a part, and this is actually what inspired me to get involved with talking about gamification, because we've got these companies out here that are really feeling sleazy and providing a pretty bad rap for getting money out of people through games, and I think I don't know about this. So I'm trying to. This was really the inspiration for my meaningful gamification, a way of saying, hey, you can do gamification in a way that isn't sleazy, in a way that actually is meaningful, in a way that can make a difference. And so that's what I'm trying to do.